Welcome everyone to this session on automating the sales process, hosted by Supernova and representing the technologies of K2 and Nintex, the two companies, Nintex and K2, coming together just last month under the Nintex brand. My name's Paul Blackwell, and I'll be your host for the beginning and the middle section of this particular session. I'm also to be joined by Michael Wall, who's a technical specialist within the Nintex group, and Marius Papachristodoulou from Supernova. For those of you that have joined us previously, you'll have already seen how K2, now Nintex, enables organizations to handle invoices and finance and also contracts. And now perhaps, for me, what I consider to be the most important thing, which is customers. We're going to be talking about customer onboarding. So, customer onboarding is all about customers. And these are going to be the most important aspect of business going forward, certainly in these quite uncertain times. So bringing on board new customers to replace those we've lost, and then keeping them, and possibly attracting them to spend more with us. Just as important, this seems to be a repeatable process. And I did a quick search on the internet, and sure enough, it seemed to me that there was lots of ideas whereby the customer onboarding process was a repeatable process, going from one thing to another. So, customer onboarding is a process that users go through when they start their journey as a customer of your product or service. The onboarding experience can define their ongoing relationship with you and the product. It may well be the most vital thing that your business does today. So, let's take a look at the key aspect of customer onboarding. First up, what does customer onboarding mean? Well, customer onboarding is the process of helping new users get started to stay engaged, new customers. It's a series of steps and resources broken down in a simple way that help make incorporating your product or service into the user's routine as easy as possible. The best customer onboarding strategies consider true customer goals. That is, what is it that users want to achieve and what does that success mean to them? And the way to do this is through a programmatic approach supported, indeed built on, a process. So onboarding is made easy when it offers users a roadmap and a process they can follow. It's clearly laid out to them what will happen to them at each step of the path. A good process will send consistent reminders and motivators, both perhaps to the new customer, but just as importantly to those involved inside your company. And also those people will have the resources available for potential sticking points. It's no different to how call centers are ready for when you have a problem with their preset answers and frequently asked questions. So onboarding is made predictable when it segments engagements based on user goals and adapts those changing goals over time. In addition to the positive aspects of onboarding, such as a user's definition of success, you also need to consider the challenges. Onboarding is all about helping a user build a new habit, which means they'll face roadblocks. They're bound to. So to counteract this, you're going to have to figure out a way to keep motivation high and barriers to maintaining momentum as low as possible. Onboarding is essential for every customer, from your first to your most recent. And don't forget to look back at existing customers and consider if they too could be put through your new onboarding process. How long does onboarding last? Well, in truth, onboarding should last as long as it takes for a customer to become both comfortable and confident with your services. One of the benefits of implementing a proper agreed customer onboarding application is that comparing the actions and engagement of retained users, those happy users, versus those who come and go, you can change your process to fit. With technology such as that offered by K2, now Nintex, you have the data to hand, who, when, what, and how many. It's critical to monitor onboarding metrics that signal whether a user is succeeding or sinking, and right from the beginning. How many times have you signed up for a service or made an inquiry, you've left messages, you've sent emails, but nobody contacts you back? Or, just as worse, it's after a week or two when you've already moved on to a competitor. Don't be that company. So, what are the best practices? Well, automate as much of the process as possible. Meanwhile, support those who get stuck in the system. And importantly, don't require hours of the user's time, the customer's time, in order to be able to do this. Let's try and do as much for them as we can. And use all the tools at your disposal. A human voice where necessary, email reminders, text messages even, and robotic process automation. In the technology, we'll show you it's possible to have a robot handle some of this for you. So why not take a look? It's part of the Nintex technology available to you. And one of the best lessons I learned was that people like gifts, free things. When I'm representing my company at a corporate trade show or exhibition, a lot of people come up looking for something free. It's human nature, and even if it's just a pen or a USB stick. These are potential customers, so why not do this with your customers which you attract in a different way, if you can afford it? A branded item can't do any harm, right? It's putting your company name in front of them all the time. So we've covered what customer onboarding can do when it's going well. Now let's address a hard fact. Your entire onboarding is depending upon the strength of your process. After all, poor onboarding leads to churn. And keeping a customer costs 1/5 of the cost of getting a new one, according to Forbes. So pay attention to the customers you lose as much as those you gain. Once you've identified your weak spots, using a good process, get to work on improving them. Improve that process, make it work better. And once again, an automated customer onboarding system like the one you're about to see will help you to do that. So, enough talking from me. Let's take a look.
Onboarding a customer into your organization can be a process that involves lots of manual effort to gather the information you need to meet regulatory and compliance standards. Paper being pushed around the organization, emails managing the process, and checklists within Excel are just some of the current systems in place in many organizations worldwide. Let's look at how intelligent automation using K2 UiPath and Azure Cognitive Services can dramatically improve efficiency, compliance, and ultimately customer experience. We start within our customer onboarding homepage within the K2 workspace, where users can have access to all their K2 apps, tasks, and reports. We see a list of in-flight onboarding processes and some high-level KPIs. The user clicks the link to start the onboarding process. They're taken to a K2 smart form where they can enter the information required for the customer they want to onboard. Once the information is complete, they click Submit, which starts the onboarding workflow process. From the homepage, the users can get real-time updates as to where their workflows are via the K2 ViewFlow. During the onboarding process, we may need to capture more information from the customer. The customer has received an email requesting they provide that additional information, along with a passcode that will allow one-time access to a mobile form to submit it. The customer enters the information and then clicks Submit. Internally, running in parallel, the workflow has also triggered a robot to go and gather the data from various sources about the customer. This job would have been a manual task for an internal resource previously. The robot has now captured and extracted all the information about the company that we need in order to onboard this new customer and has submitted it back into the workflow. An internal user has now received a task to review the information received from both the robot and the external customer submission. However, after they review it, it's determined that more documentation is required before we can approve the onboarding. We select the type of documentation required and click Submit. The customer then receives an email asking for that additional documentation. They simply reply to the email and attach the relevant documents. On receipt of the email, these documents are extracted out and saved into the document repository for this onboarding process. Once the customer submits those documents, a task is assigned to a member of the onboarding team to conduct a final review of all the customer's information. However, a document has been flagged as high risk. The user can delve deeper to understand the content. In the background, a robot has extracted all the document content and has asked K2 to pass it through the Azure Text Analytics engine. This has then highlighted the portion of the content that was flagged as high risk, but having reviewed the information, the reviewer has decided that it's appropriate to move on in the process and approve the customer. A robot has generated the contract document in the background, and K2 is coordinating with DocuSign to have the customer sign the contract. The customer then receives an email, clicks on the link, and signs the newly created contract. Once DocuSign notifies K2 that the contract has been signed, the onboarding process is complete, and all documentation, audit trails, and systems of record are updated.
Welcome back, everybody. So great customer onboarding, fantastic. You've just seen a good demonstration of how we think it could look. Of course, you will have your own customer onboarding process, and that's exactly what you can use the K2 Nintex technology to be able to map. So looking forwards, that's fine, onboarding the customers, but what about getting those customers in the first place and being able to keep those customers and enabling ourselves to have a better process for capturing those customers in the first place? So let's have a look. What we're now going to look at is something called quote to cash, which is the sales process. And the sales process itself should be reasonably straightforward, I hope. First of all, perhaps you'll get a lead. Somebody will phone you, or somebody will walk into your showroom, or you'll have something come from a show or something like that. You're going to register that opportunity in your CRM system. You'll then raise a quote. Great. You'll then do the approval. The customer will sign. You'll send out an invoice. You'll collect the cash. You'll keep a record of the transaction that's happened. And great, you've now got a customer that you can put into the customer onboarding system, and then you can start talking to again about perhaps a new lead, and then so it goes back through the process itself. Now, that process might seem straightforward and fairly easy. However, we all know that there are lots of things that can go wrong. For instance, if you're not keeping a track of those leads, then how do you know that you're dealing with them on time, that you're responding to those people in the right time frame? And in terms of raising a quote, what happens about the approvals that it has to go to? Organizations where the salespeople are able to raise their own quotes on a Word template and then send them out to a customer are taking a huge risk. Of course, you need people to approve those offers that are going out. And there's many stories of people that have lost their job, salespeople, because they've raised a quote to a customer that hasn't been approved by senior management. And quite often, those approvals, especially if you're a company that works across your own country or across other countries or even globally, those approvals can get quite complicated. Perhaps you'll have a sales manager plus a CFO, plus maybe you'll have a product director and so on, product manager, somebody looking after that particular product. I'm aware of one organization we're working with. They have SAP in the cloud, and they implemented K2 in order to be able to automate this sales process for them, the actual getting the approvals. Their previous approval time for getting from a quote being raised, in other words, the salesperson puts it together, and then getting it past the approvals to the point where it could be sent to a customer, was 6.4 days before they undertook the K2 implementation. Since K2, that's reduced to 3.2 days, so a reduction of 50%. Now that's great. They're raising 15,000 quotes a month. 15,000 quotes a month. Think that's 45,000 days a month that they're saving in terms of the approval time frame. And we all know that when you've spoken to a customer, if you're in sales, you speak to a customer, you say, great, let me get you an offer across. It really doesn't help if that offer doesn't come across for a week or 2 weeks. It needs to come as soon as possible. And that's what you can do with a good quote to cash system. Okay, getting the quote out the door and then putting it through as a sale. Aberdeen Group did some research around this. They called it Breaking the Laws of Physics, shortening the last sales mile through workflow automation. It's a good read. It's only about 6 pages or so through, but a good document. And if I summarize for you the kind of things that they talked about in there, about the benefits that a quote to cash system can bring you, the way it can transform your business, that according to the research they did, that over 100%, so twice as many deals were larger. 26% more sales reps were meeting their targets. They had a shorter sales cycle by the same amount, 26%, a higher conversion rate, 17%, and a higher proposal volume of 49%. So that's almost 1 extra proposal for every 2 that they're currently delivering today. And that has to be good for your business. So behind the scenes, a good quote to cash system will make all the difference. So we're going to see one of those now. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Graham. Okay, so I hope you enjoy the quote to cash demo next, and I'll talk to you in a few minutes. Thank you.
Well, hello and welcome to this part of our session today. My name is Graham Penman, Technical Specialist here at K2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a demonstration of how K2 can help automate parts of the sales process within your organization. Now, I say parts of the sales process is because many organizations have a CRM system in place. So at K2, we have Salesforce. You may have Dynamics or SAP or another one of the leading CRM providers. But the principle is really the same across any of those technologies. These technologies are fantastic at storing that customer information. They're great at being that data repository for all things customer related. And they're also quite good at the end-to-end process of the sales cycle. So allowing you to mark at what stage you are so you can do analysis of where your business is and how your sales are performing. But sometimes the CRM systems, although they're good at that end-to-end high-level process, they're not great at automating the individual parts. So at K2, one of the major headaches that we had and many organizations have is at the proposal and quoting stage, because although the CRM is good at having all that information, it's not great at automating the nitty gritty of a proposal and quoting part. So at K2, we actually used K2 to augment that for us, using all that good information and data from within our CRM system, but building a quoting and proposal app that wraps around it and allows us to do that particular part of the sales process. Things like financial approvals, legal approvals before you generate the documentation and get the documentation signed by the customer, and then leaving Salesforce to model the entirety of the end-to-end sales process itself. But K2 doing that real heavy lifting at the proposal and quoting stage. So what I'd like to do is just show you a demonstration about how that works in practice. So let's start as we go into our CRM system itself. So let's go into our sales console and let's find an opportunity here. So let's go into sales within the CRM and let's find our opportunity here, or here we go. Let's go to our recent records and find our company. So this is our account that we want to add a new opportunity to. I've been talking to them. They want to buy some of our services. Let's go in and say new opportunity. I'm going to create, this is going to be our new webinar op. Within there, I'm going to say to my sales manager, I'm going to close at the end of August. And again, we've got our default stages for our sales process. I'm going to put it into the needs analysis stage just now and click save. So I've created a new opportunity. And now we're going to come in and view that opportunity record. So you can see up here we have our end-to-end sales process from prospecting to closed. And we can go in here and we can manually change those. And there's no real automated process behind these. You can come in, you can update and see when we've moved things on. We can view the details and the activities that are involved. But when it comes to the proposal and price quote here, there's actually a lot more involved in that than just clicking a button to say it's been done. And you can see as we moved it to that stage, a couple of new links have appeared. We've got some tasks that have been assigned to us. We have a new quote button and a view quote button here as well. And what happens is when I click that new quote button, it takes us into a K2 app that's going to allow us to generate that quote and create it and then manage the entire process of having financial approval, legal approval, and then eventually the customer actually signing it. So on this new quote, we're in a K2 app now. All that information we're going to use from the Salesforce CRM system as well. Here I'm going to select the price list that I want to use to generate the quote. As I come in here, we can see that we've got the quote details, all that information pulled from within Salesforce about the customer. And we can come down, we can add new line items to the quote. So I'm going to come into our price catalog and say I'm going to add some K2 services in here, duration, and there I'm going to add some information. Of course, this is just set up with demo data for this scenario, but this could all be tailored and customized for your price catalog, for your products and services. I'm going to add some bundle user licensing in there as well. And then maybe I'll add some discount in a second, because if I come down to the bottom, we can see that we have this approval stage of what's happening at the moment. We're going to set up the quote, we're then going to sign it, we're going to complete it. But as a sales rep, I might want to add some discount in here. So I'm going to add quite a hefty discount of 50%. and add that in there. And because of that threshold, it's actually said, well, now there needs to be finance approval within this process as well. The same goes for all these terms of use and standard terms you would have on your quotes. If I go in here and say, actually, the customer wants us to edit this, I'm just going to write edit in there and click accept. It's highlighted now that that's different to the default. And that's going to have to go through a legal approval. So let's go down to the bottom. We can see legal approval in there as well. Now, for the sake of time, I'm actually going to revert that back and not go through the legal approval as well and just accept that legal know best when it comes to these terms and contracts. So I'm going to leave it as default. We won't have to go through that approval stage. But it's also picked up here who the potential signatories are for this account from the contacts from within the CRM. So it's picked up that Steve Smith is the CFO, probably the most likely person to sign off the contract. And again, I'm going to sign it off as an internal employee. So I'm now happy with that quote. I've created all, this is all within the K2 app, within the K2 smart form, hooked in with Salesforce with all the data. I'm going to click submit, and that's going to submit it back. And it's going to take me to our quote to cash dashboard. So it's going to take me and show me all the in-flight quotes that are happening at the moment. So if I just refresh that, we can see that we've got our new quote at the top. I can click at any point and see the K2 view flow to see where we are within that end-to-end quoting process. So real-time view of the workflow that's sitting in behind. So we're now in the finance approval. It might go down to legal approval and a bunch of other stuff, including the signing of the contract. So I'll keep that open and it will highlight as we go down to show us where we are within the process. Now, if we actually go back into our Salesforce opportunity and just refresh that page, you'll notice that as well as having the proposal and price quote there and some tasks in here, we actually have also updated the information in the stage history down here. So we're interacting both with a read and a write into the CRM to allow people who maybe aren't involved in the quoting process to see what's happening within this opportunity. So let's go back to our quote to cash dashboard. If I click on our opportunity here, I can see I've got finance approval. So let's put my finance hat on now. Obviously, tasks get assigned to the most relevant person within your organization to do. It wouldn't come to me as the salesperson. It would go to the finance director or the finance team to approve that. So they would get a notification by email to say they've got a new task, and they will have a link to that task, or they come to the dashboard and they can open up the task from here. So let's open up that new quote and approval task for finance. So they get a very similar view as we had before with all the line items. The key thing is here, although they have a similar view of it, they only get access to do the things that they're allowed to do. So they can only change and modify this piece. They can't do anything to do with the terms and conditions. So the internal finance team go, oh, wait a minute, 50%? I don't think so. Let's click on that and let's edit that and say, actually, you're only going to be allowed the statutory 10% discount on that, and revise that down just now. So we'll be updating that in the CRM once we approve this part. I'm going to go down. I'm happy with the rest of it. I've got my finance hat on. Okay, I'm going to approve the changes that have been made. I don't need to supply any comments. I'm just going to click submit. And that has now actioned that task. And it's going to go through the next stage of the workflow. So let's come down here. And now we're actually contacting a back-end system to generate that quote. So it's going to take all that information, generate the quote out. It's then going to save the file as a PDF. And then it's going to upload it into our e-signature tool that we're using for this demonstration, which is DocuSign. Now, of course, we can integrate with other e-signature tools, Adobe eSign, and there's a host of others that we could be using as well. But it's now contacting our e-signature tool, packaging that document up, saying, okay, well, here's the people that we've identified that need to sign this document from Salesforce, which will be the CFO. Please send them an email and then sign it out and assign the task to the external party to come in and sign that document. So if I go back to my dashboard, I'm actually going to act as the external party now. They would have access to this via an email, but I'm just going to open it up from my task list for ease. They get an email from DocuSign saying, please sign it, with a link to this form. So they can open up the form as the customer. They can then come in and view the document that they need to be able to sign. So let me just sign that in there. Click continue. Here's the quote. I am happy with all that. Mr. Steve Smith, I'm going to sign it and adopt that signature and sign it as the customer. Click finish. And when I click finish, it's all going to automatically close that task off, say the customer has now signed it, and it's going to move on to the next stage of the process instantly, which is the employee internally, the person who is authorized within your organization to sign quotes and sign them off, is going to get a task. Again, emails and notifications would be sent out, so you'll get that direct to your inbox with a link that you'll be able to click on to come in here and say, okay, well, I can now see that the customer has signed this. I now need to go back in and sign this as the internal authorized signatory for this. So I'm going to sign it as Graham Penman in there, click finish. And it's going to come back and say to K2, I've now done that task. It's going to redirect me back to Salesforce, where we can see that we've actually updated a bunch of information. So here you can see that we've updated the final quote price with all the expected revenue and discount that's changed. I was given a lot of discount before. It's now updated to the expected revenue that's changed to what we authorized within the quote. It's uploaded the quote, signed quote document directly back into the CRM. So K2's managed that entire process, taken all the things that have been generated in the data and pushed it back in. So you have that one key record, one key source of truth for your opportunities. But it's also updated the stage within our main CRM system. So it's moved into the negotiation and review stage and updated that, and everything to do with K2 has been removed now from that process. K2's done its job for the quote and proposal stage and moved the stage on within your CRM system. So what you've seen there is the ability to control your end-to-end sales process in your CRM system. Keep that source of truth information there, but then augment your sales process and add value into your sales process by using a K2 app built on top of the K2 platform with our drag and drop user interface designer and workflow designer to have multiple approvals, control that quoting and proposal stage with the complexities that that can have with your price catalogs, etc. And then have all that information pushed back into the CRM and then continue on with your process to automate and do a lot of the heavy lifting involved in that fairly complex part of your sales process.
Hey everyone, this is Marius Papachristodoulou with Supernova Consulting, here to close up this exciting series. We will go briefly over what we saw in each of the 3 webinars and how that could help you run your business more efficiently. In case you've missed any of the 3 webinars, feel free to watch them through our YouTube channel. Just go on YouTube and search for Supernova Consulting. From there you can watch the 2 previous webinars and also revisit today's webinar once it has become available. So, in the first webinar of this series, we have watched a small intro into K2 and why it is beneficial for you. We've also taken a first glimpse into how it looks and how it can connect to virtually anything with an API seamlessly. Then, we watched the demo, showcasing a smart contract management scenario where users were able to generate and streamline the contract management process through K2. In the demo, we watched the user creating a new contract with a vendor which came from SAP. We saw how K2 could support a vast selection of contract types to cover the needs of any business, no matter how complicated they appear to be. We saw how the contract could be dynamically generated through its seamless integration with a document generation tool, such as DocuSign. We viewed how the signature path was streamlined and how easy it was to trace this path, and how to set up expiry dates and reminders for each contract. So who could benefit from such a process? Well, the answer is simple. Any company that handles a high volume of such contracts would benefit from using this paperless and streamlined solution. In particular, though, companies in the legal or corporate services and in the shipping industry would be good candidates for a similar implementation. In our second webinar, we saw an amazing streamlined process for procurement to pay. The process steps were: an employee creates a new requisition by submitting the form. Then, their manager approves or rejects with a conditional second approval, for example, when the requested amount exceeds a pre-approved budget. Once approved, the requester selects a few vendors to include in the request for quotation process. Each vendor would then individually receive a once-off link to log into our form and fill in their offer. We also saw how we could set up a deadline for the vendors and how we can select either automatically or manually the preferred vendor based on our own personal criteria. Finally, we saw the generation of the purchase order automatically in our backend SAP system through K2. So why was this an important process to streamline and automate? There are many reasons for that. For example, streamlining your P2P process will help avoiding making duplicate payments. It will help you control your budgets and your spend in general. You can have better budget control of your expenditure. Another reason might be that the platform enables you to easily handle the process even with a large amount of suppliers and control your spend towards preferred suppliers. So who could benefit from all this? Well, any company in the industry that has a large volume of such requisitions would have much to gain from implementing this process. And finally, we reached today's webinar where Michael has demonstrated two more processes. The first one was the customer onboarding process, also utilizing robotic process automation technology, or bot. This could be, of course, beneficial to any company, since obviously all companies have customers, but would be especially beneficial in companies who are in the legal or corporate services sector, and financial services where the KYC process is critical to their day-to-day operations. The same scenario could apply to vendor onboarding, which would be very beneficial to companies in the pharmaceutical or even the public sector. And with that, we would like to thank you all for your participation in this series of webinars. We hope that we have given you some food for thought as to how a business process management platform such as K2 can be beneficial to your organization in so many ways. We really hope that this will be the beginning of your journey towards the future. We are certain that with our expertise and our platform, we can work together and achieve great things. We're at your disposal for any direct questions you may have. Feel free to reach out to us here at Supernova and we will help you digitize your processes as we progress into the new era. So we've successfully reached the end of this webinar. From all of us here at Supernova and K2, thank you once again and have a great rest of your day.